You're so playful, aren't you? Welcome to another episode of Daniel Lee Plastering and Rendering. So we can see here we are doing some wonderful render repairs today. We're going to start by getting a lovely thick primer over everything and then fitting the beads. So first things first, we're removing, there's a bit of a damaged render at the bottom there that you can see I've taken a hammer to and removed. Kris is now protecting around the doors. He's taping up around the edges of the windows to protect all that from the render. And I am cracking on with the beads. So the whole area that is to be repaired or to be made good, we need to first fix. We use white PVC render beads, external render beads, and it really is crucial to spend the time, obviously this is speeded up dramatically, to get these beads right, because if you take the extra time to get all these beads lovely and level with the right thickness off the wall, although in this case they're very thick because the wall's quite lumpy bumpy in different levels, it makes the rest of it so much easier. So we will be fixing the beads on day one, and you'll see Kris is there with a very, very strong, grippy primer. It's called Universal Primer. It's an EWI from EWI, and he's painting all the brickwork very thoroughly with that as I crack on with the PVC beads there. You can see here, this is all the beads are now prepared and in place. Now this has been a particularly challenging one, which we love, because I don't know if you can see the thickness on here, and then getting over here as well. That's not for the faint-hearted, but say Sticks Like Turbo is fantastic stuff for things like this. Now this has used about 9 tubes, might even be a bit more actually, and we've got all the beads on. We've actually run out, so we are going to put a bit more in just to seal up. You see the damp course line there, so that will have a solid bead, but as you can see, I don't know if I can show you there, it is quite thick around there, but what we've done, we've beaded it to get it all level. Not so bad there. And then we're just really tidying this up for the customer, who just wants it to look a bit prettier. So we're going to smarten all this up. So we're going to mix up, I believe 3 or 4 bags at a time. I think 3 bags with the wonderful cordless DeWalt mixing drill there. Now I found with render, the DeWalt batteries, they do run out much quicker. It's possibly because perhaps sometimes we mix the render quite stiff. Sometimes that will burn through the batteries a little bit quicker, but we find we get 2 good mixes per battery on the whole, and we are ready to go. Don't know if it shows it really. It's some crazy thickness. again, we should make sure it's this is much thicker than normal render, so this will need to be anchored to the wall. So when we render mesh it, we're going to apply reinforcement mesh over the top, which will then have mechanical fixings pinning it to the wall to ensure it doesn't fall off. Then we will also have your normal 10mm final top coat of render over the top. So under normal circumstances, don't put it on this thick and think you're okay without the fixings and reinforcement mesh. It may fall off the wall. It's gobbling up the gear. Also note the gear has been mixed. It's also got extra additives, it's got extra SBR in, which makes it much stickier and stronger than standard render. As you can see, that's impressively thick, this stuff. Much thicker than under normal circumstances you would apply. However, as I did say, I've used a lot of extra SBR additive, which is an incredibly strong gluey adhesive strengthener, which will allow us to build it out much thicker than normal. Also, I will be adding 4 mechanical fixings to that section below the window because that is particularly thick. The other areas are quite thick, but not as thick as underneath the window. So the rest you can see there, I'm ruling off. It's difficult to see on the video, but there is a huge bow in that wall and it bellies outwards. So it's sort of quite thin towards the top section of the wall, and then it gets a bit thicker at the beads, and then it's much thicker at the bottom of the wall, where we've levelled it as best we can with all of our beads. But it does mean much more building out of the wall with the render. You can see, so what we've done, we've put a decent coat of render on, ruled it off because it is so lumpy bumpy, we've ruled it off. We are now putting the render mesh. Again, we're using EWI Pro's render mesh. Great stuff, does the job. Render mesh is render mesh. You can get it from all sorts of places, but we happen to have an EWI store reasonably close to us, so we like using those. And once we've ruled off the first coat, we will then bed this mesh on as you see there, so sort of cut it into position. Kris is just trimming it with the Stanley blade. I know some of you don't like it when I use scissors, but I quite like scissors. He likes blades. Then it gets pressed in with the trowel. This is sand and cement render. For those of you that have watched different videos, when you do a thin coat render system, you would use a notched trowel, or you can get a notched straight edge with basically a tiling trowel. You would rule off the base coat with the tiling trowel and then stick the reinforcement mesh on that. Sand and cement is different, it works differently. You do not need to use a notched trowel with sand and cement. And then once the mesh is applied, put another coat, a thin coat over the top, and that can then be scratched as you see in front there. And that is all of the areas fully scratched. There is some serious thickness on there, so we're going to give that 24 hours to harden. This is pre-mixed 1 coat render, so technically we could have gone over it possibly the same day, but I didn't want to risk it, so we let it go hard. And then this is the next day, jump forward, had a slight camera malfunction, so we basically put on another coat, cleaned it all off, and jumped straight to me floating it up there. So it's actually a little bit on the wet side at the moment, so I'm just giving a quick once over. It's had a roll off, and you'll see I'm just getting rid of any high spots by whipping over once with the power float before it gets too hard. I found it highlights any hollers very, very nicely that then Kris is able to follow behind and fill in. You see the very edge there, another important detail. So where the stop bead runs at the top of the wall, I've put, or we've put should I say, a little bit of render at a slight angle so that the water won't sit on that bead. Again, this is a detail that this customer's just wanted this bit of render in order to just sort of tidy up this wall a bit. We are very much on the home straight now, giving it all a float up with the plastic float, and also then a sponge. So you see I'm there rubbing it up with a sponge, and Kris is taking off the tapes now and touching up certain areas. And that is the finished result. We've got a lovely before shot there, and finished. Thanks for watching.